Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Robert Enlow, CEO of the EdChoice, an organization advancing educational freedom and choice for all as a pathway to successful lives and a stronger society. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is a national leader in school choice research. Hello, Robert. Welcome to Grade.com Talks With. We're excited to have you here.
Hello, Kareem. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Could you please describe the EdChoice for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Absolutely. So EdChoice is a national organization based in America, based in Indianapolis, Indiana, the middle of the country. And our job is very simple. We want to solve the problem that there's too few children getting good education in America. We want to make sure education improves so that our society can be a better society and so that we can have a stronger set of individuals. So we believe that all parents should get all the money that's set aside for them in taxes, and they should be able to take it and go to any school setting that they want. So I like to say every dollar should follow every family to every available option or every potential option that we can think of. And in America, as you might know, the system of education that we've developed is based on where you live and you're assigned to school. And it's been run by the traditional school districts. And that's just not been a successful model. And so our goal is to try and change that through parental choice.
That's quite interesting, the fact that you mentioned that the current education system in the United States is based on one choice that you have based on where you live, but your organization is fighting for all students and all families to have as many choices as possible when it comes to education. Could you?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're going to be passionate about this, Kareem. We've created in this country a system whereby if you can afford a house, you can get a better education. The quality of your education is often based on the ability to purchase a house. And so if you happen to be in the middle class or lower middle class and you're struggling and working two jobs with two family members and you can't afford a house that's $600,000, you're out of luck if the school doesn't work. And so we think that it's unfair for families like that to be constrained to where they live to determine their school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a cycle of generational cycle. If you can't afford a better house, you can't afford a better school. You don't have access to better school, and that cycle continues until one of the family members in different generations decides to buy a house in a better neighborhood with better opportunities. But that indicates that the system is not built equally for families from different financial backgrounds. Why school choice is important, and how is it affecting families and students across the United States?
So school choice is important because it gives every family who gets the opportunity to go to a school that they believe in, that they choose, the chance to make sure their child gets the best possible education. And our research suggests, and we know through history and evidence, that a family who chooses or a person who picks something is far more invested in that choice than if they're just told to get something. And so we think school choice is important because when families choose, our parents get more involved, our kids get a better education, and our society gets better.
Mm-hmm. So if a person has a choice, they're more likely to be engaged. They're more likely to invest their time into learning things and believing that this is the choice that I made. And if I made the choice, then I can build whatever I want. I can reach as many goals or heights as available. And you mentioned that not every family has this opportunity of a school choice. And how is it impacting those students that don't have this choice to go to the school of their choice? How is their life is different? Mm-hmm.
So there's two things here. For those children who are lucky enough to get public funds to go to private schools or charter schools or other choice schools in America, we know from the data that they're doing better on test scores, that they're graduating at higher rates, that they're going into college and staying in college at higher rates. And so there's a lot of benefits to the kids themselves. We also know from the data that, the kids who are not being able to choose, who are still in the traditional public school system, they're actually getting better faster. So what ends up happening is the competition from parental choice is basically forcing the traditional school district to improve a lot faster, because if they don't improve, they lose students. And so that one ability to have a vote with your feet, as we call it, the ability to walk out of a school and say, I can take my money with me, is really changing the nature of education in the states that has educational choice.
Mm. That's quite interesting. The fact that the progress that students make in private school is also advancing the quality of education and the quality of students' knowledge in a public school. So although the circumstances are not healthy, but it creates some kind of competition to ensure that there is some level of equality.
So that's a really good point. We want children and families to get in where they fit in. We don't think private school is the answer. We don't think charter schools are the answer. We don't think public school is the answer. We think that parental choice is the answer. So we're agnostic to school type. We don't care what type of school you go to, but we care that the dollars follow you, that you as a family member have control over the money that is used for your child. And that power, it really does create not only equality, but equity. Right. And so when you're a low income family, and I've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times, that have never been able to choose, that has never had the power to choose, and you're all of a sudden given a $5,000 scholarship to go to whatever school you want for your children, you can watch the families see the generational poverty breaking. They can see it in their eyes that they're going to break that cycle. And so that's the sort of equity piece, right? And the equality piece is, as a result, is everyone is getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe this is completely true. The fact that if families and children from low-income families have an ability to get a better education, then they can build wealth for their family, as well as the society might be moving in the direction of equality in terms of getting equal access to education. You mentioned that different education, the location is one of the factors on the quality of schools and the quality of the education that the schools provide. Why the educational system has failed many students, and what kind of advancements does it need to be an equal?
So that's a great question, and a question that we have spent my lifetime now working on. The way that we organize education in America, and it's true also, I think, in Canada to a lesser degree in the UK, is we basically say you are living in a place, you're therefore assigned to a school, and it's free when you go through taxpayer support. Now, if we were in any other place and any other sort of discussion, that would be called a monopoly. Right. And so what ended up happening in America in particular is we created a monopolistic system of delivering education. We believe in the public good of education. It's super important, but we don't necessarily agree that only the government should run education. Right. So we believe in the public funding of schools, right, through taxpayer support, but not the government running of not the government administration of schools. And so what ended up happening in America was you consolidated power to a small sector of society and made it a monopoly. And as you know, just basic economic theory, monopolies don't change without outside pressure. And so giving families the ability to choose presents and creates that outside pressure and creates more equity and opportunity. That's an interesting way to look at markets, right? So this is a question, right? So again, I mentioned to you prior, I did my postgraduate study in liberation theology, right? And so I came to this organization as a radical, I would argue, fairly radical left person, and I have come to believe that the idea of government mandated schooling is actually more detrimental to our society than almost anything else besides slavery and racism. And we need to break this cycle of how we deliver education, because if we don't, our families are going to continue to multi-generational poverty. And I'm not willing to continue that, allowing that, because frankly, our country cannot afford to lose another generation after the last. 1 million kids in America drop out every year, 1 million. And they've been doing that for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. So what does that say about our society that we haven't figured that out yet? And so school choice is one of those ways to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's quite an interesting outlook to look at the school system as a business, and saying that as it has been monopoly for such a long period of time, there hasn't been innovation, there hasn't been a change, because there is one organization, in this case a government, deciding and not letting other outsider third parties to come into the competition and build a better education system. What does your research suggest? If the school system is not administrated by the government, who should it be administrated by, according to the research that your organization does?
It's a great question. So the research that we have shows that it's more effective if you basically allow, as you know, in America, we have state government that runs education, right? That funds education, and then local districts that run it. Our research has found that if states continue to do the funding of education, but give that money to families, that's how the improvement of the system happens quicker. So the oversight comes from the state level through the administration of funds, and then basically families can go wherever they want. And what's really even interesting, what our data is showing, is you got to remember, as you know, in a monopoly, and let's be very clear what I mean by that. K-12 education is a monopoly insofar as you cannot allow other people to deliver education. There's all sorts of corporations making a lot of money off of K-12 education. Textbooks organizations, janitorial organizations. It is a big business in our state, and in fact, in almost every state, it's 50% of our state budget, right? So half of every tax dollar in our state goes to K-12 education. And so that is a huge industry. Let's call it what it is. It's an industry. And we know from our data and the research that shows that when families are given choices, that industry has to improve faster. The kids are getting a better product, and they're getting a better service, and the families are getting more involved. What's really interesting is when a family gets a choice, a low-income family, the mother will say to you, I'm going to school more, I'm helping with homework more, I'm voting more. It's really interesting to see the results from our research when you're given that choice. And so our research suggests that the school choice is not necessarily a panacea, but it's a necessary precondition to real change.
Allow me to clarify. You mentioned that the research suggests that if the government spending the taxpayers' money instead of just going to the schools, it goes to the families and students. They can go and access different kinds of school that they want. But wouldn't it create more bubble for different organizations to come and build different schools and make the tuition even higher? And the situation will remain the same. So the better education will cost more, while the general education will cost the entry level?
Super good question. And I'll remind us all who are my age or you're younger. I had one of the first original cell phones that was about that big, right? And I was lucky enough to be able to afford it, but not everyone could afford it, right? It was a disequitous environment for cell phones, right? Over time, however, as people purchased cell phones and technology improved, now you get to the point where the cost per cell phone is so cheap that everyone has one, right? So where I would disagree with you a little bit is that when you allow more providers to come in, private schools, charter schools, public schools, there are a lot of great public schools, right? Let's be clear about that. When you allow that diversity of provider, you're going to drive down the cost. You're not going to drive up the cost. Because remember, if you believe a monopoly, right, and then a monopoly basically has a higher level of cost for a lower level of quality, because they have a market capture, right? So when people are captured, you can spend what you want. So that we've found out that basically the prices go down over time if a family can have the options.
Interesting. Thank you for clarifying.
Counterintuitive, Kareem, right? It's counterintuitive in many
Yes,
ways, right? To the
absolutely.
way
Yeah.
I think, right?
You imagine then when there is an open competition, when there is a free market, obviously there are going to be a lot of competitors, and they either they can fluctuate the prices going up or they can going down. But you mentioned that research shows that over the time the cost will go down, allowing more students and more families to afford high quality education. Your organization does a lot of research, and you also work with policymakers. How do you communicate your findings and your results to policymakers? And do policymakers take action on them?
Great question. So we look at our research like a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid is a very thought out, very rigorously done study. Whether it's about how parents are using school choice or how test scores are improving through school choice, very rigorous. Then that study then becomes an executive summary, right? A small version, and then that executive summary becomes talking points. And those are what gets communicated in graphic form to policymakers, right? So, because what they need is instant information that they can share quickly and understand quickly. So, for example, I can tell you that every single study shows that children who get a voucher perform better on tests. They just need the number, right? Now, I can give them the whole study, which we have, but it's super important to be honest and full of integrity when you do research. So the way that we communicate with legislators is important. First of all, you have to be genuine and you have to have integrity, and you can't lie, right? And you can't twist. And then you have to present it in a way that they can see and understand clearly. And how they take action, ultimately, it's up to them. Our job is to educate policymakers to say, here's the data, good and bad. You get to decide whether you think it's good, something to act on or not. Because we don't do advocacy, we do education. So we don't lobby as much as a lot of other organizations. Our job is to say, here's what the data is. Here's what you know the data says. You can decide on how to act on it.
Mm. Yeah. Showing clear numbers, showing clear impact, and explaining it in a manner that is not time consuming, but very effective and on point. You mentioned why vouchers, the results on the vouchers, you provided the numbers, and it's super effective because there is a number, there is an impact, and there is suggestion of how it can be changed. But policy, at the end of the day, you are educating them, you're raising awareness on the importance of having a choice for the education, and policymakers can and should take into consideration this liberty of families and all Americans when making decisions when it comes to education system and higher education system in general.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing, if you don't mind, and that is all that data and presented that way is really more powerful when you humanize it with a family story who've actually benefited from the opportunity. And so we spend a lot of time working with families who will tell you, my child was falling behind and now I've had this opportunity, and they have become an A student in a very rigorous school setting. So all those kind of personal humanized stories are really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's impacting the lives of people. It's not just a number, or it's not just one case. It's many cases of families and children all across America. So having a strong story and powerful reminder on that is very important as well.
And it's important for our organization that we help give voice to low-income families. Because we hear, and I've heard this for 25 years now, those families, I don't know if they can choose. I'm not sure they have the capability of choosing. They surely don't have all the information they need. I find that a gratuitous insult to poor people, that somehow they're incapable of making a choice just because they don't have money, or even making a good choice, right? There's a difference between access and knowledge and capability. And so I think that one of our jobs at EdChoice is to make sure that families like that have a voice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Providing a platform, providing a ground for low-income families to speak up and to tell that we are struggling and we need help in this situation, and your organization is highlighting that for many families across the United States when it comes to educational choice. If someone would like to support the choice, how can they do that?
So it's very simple. Our website is edchoice.org, edchoice.org. And on that website there's a donate button. There's a way to look at who we are and our mission and our values and our goals. And then always you can call me. My emails and cell phone is actually all over the website. So I'm a very open book when it comes to that. So, and that's all on the website. Edchoice.org is the best way to get a hold of us and donate to us if people want to.
Perfect. The link to the EdChoice website will be provided in the description. So you listening or viewing can go to the website and familiarize yourself with the great work Robert and his team are doing, and you can support and make a financial contribution to their work. Thank you so much, Robert. It was great to get to know you and learn about the importance of having educational choice.
Thank you so much for having me.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important, that advancing the educational freedom and having a choice when it comes to education is key to building generational wealth and having freedoms. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.